Ladies and gentlemen, the Hyundai IONIQ 6 SE is one of the best lease deals in the country, not only in terms of price, but also in terms of value. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go to Hyundai.com and we'll study the lease terms for this Hyundai IONIQ 6 in detail, and I'll give you lots of helpful tips and tricks as it pertains to car leasing along the way. And then in the second part of this video, what we'll do is run the 1.25% rule of leasing on this Hyundai IONIQ 6. And the 1.25% rule of leasing is just a rule of thumb that I use to determine whether or not a particular lease deal is a good lease deal in terms of value. And then in the last part of this video, what we'll do is we'll compare the monthly lease payments for this Hyundai IONIQ 6 to the monthly finance payments for this Hyundai IONIQ 6, and I'll show you why leasing this Hyundai IONIQ 6 is a financial no-brainer, especially when you factor in the $7,500 EV tax credit. So ladies and gentlemen, if that sounds good to you, please give this video a like and please give me a subscribe or a follow. That would be greatly appreciated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are on Hyundai's website, and as you can see, you can lease a 2024 Hyundai IONIQ 6 SE with a starting MSRP of $42,450 for $189 a month. That just sounds crazy just saying it. It's a 24-month lease that requires just $1,999 due at lease signing. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, this deal includes the $7,500 EV tax credit, as you can see right here. Now, right off the bat, as it pertains to this $7,500 EV tax credit, you would only get that $7,500 EV tax credit if you were to lease this car. So if you bought or financed this car, you would not get the $7,500 tax credit. You would only get it if you lease this car, and that's why leasing this car is so attractive from a financial standpoint. So what we'll do is we'll click on Show Disclaimer, and ladies and gentlemen, that's going to bring up the fine print. And if you watch any of my videos, you know that we love fine print because that's where we get all of the juicy details that we're looking for. Now, right away, when we read the fine print, you'll see that this 2024 Hyundai IONIQ 6 is available in limited quantities and at select dealers and in select states only. Now, you'll also see that this deal excludes registration, tax, title, and license. So, ladies and gentlemen, this $7,500 EV tax credit and any other rebates and incentives that Hyundai is offering, you may have to pay taxes on those incentives. And on top of that, this deal does not include state registration fees. So here in the state of Washington, a car with a $43,600 MSRP, an electric car, you're probably looking at about a $600 to $900 registration cost. You know, I'm not really sure because I don't have a DMV calculator handy, but you're looking at about $600 to $900. And if you factor in the taxes and the acquisition fee that's also due, you're probably looking at about an additional $2,000 that's due at signing. You'll also see that this car has an MSRP of $43,600, and that is important when we use the 1.25% rule of leasing, so more on that a little bit later in this video. And then you'll see that you have the option to purchase this car at lease end for $31,828. Now, there is a misconception out there that anytime you lease a vehicle, you don't have the option to purchase it, but most leases, aside from Tesla, do have the option to purchase at lease end. And with the lease end purchase option, you also have, the capability to realize any positive equity that you have in this lease. So let's just say that at the end of the 24-month term, if you have positive equity, which means the car is worth more than this $31,828, you do have the capability of realizing that positive equity. Now, you also see that this lease allows for 12,000 miles a year. Now, if you need a 15,000 mile a year lease, it's better to get that at the beginning when you sign your lease rather than paying the 20-cent a mile excess mileage penalty that Hyundai charges. Now, you'll also see that this lease has a disposition fee of $400, and it applies in all states except for these ones listed here. And ladies and gentlemen, disposition fees are extremely common. Every single manufacturer has a disposition fee. It's just the amount that the fee that the manufacturer charges you when you turn your lease back in to the dealer. And if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see that you do have more potential savings that are not factored into this lease deal right here. You can get an additional $500 off with a military rebate or a military program, an additional $400 off with a college grad program. Now in this part of the video, I want to talk about my 1.25% rule of leasing, which is a rule of thumb, as I mentioned, that I use to determine whether or not a particular lease deal is a good lease deal in terms of value. Because ladies and gentlemen, a $189 payment really doesn't mean anything. It could be a $189 payment on a $10,000 car. That's not really a good lease deal. But this car has an MSRP of $43,600, I believe, and we'll discuss why that is a good deal in this part of the video using my 1.25% rule of leasing. Now to run the 1.25% rule of leasing, I'm going to bust out my calculator. What I'm going to do is take the $1,999 that's due at lease signing. I'm going to subtract $189 from that amount, since that $1,999 that's due at lease signing includes the first month's payment. Next, what I'm going to do is divide this $1,810 by 24 months, since this is a 24 month, and what that does is takes that due at signing amount and breaks it up into 24 equal parts, and that gives me $75.41. And then I'm going to add the monthly payment of $189 back in, and that gives me a pre-tax monthly payment with $0 down, since I rolled the money due at signing into the monthly payment. So this gives me a $0 down pre-tax monthly payment of $264 a month. Now, if I multiply this by 1.1 to account for 10% sales tax where I live here in Seattle, Washington, that gives me a monthly payment including taxes with $0 down. It would be $290 a month. And if I divide this by this vehicle's MSRP, which is $43,600, and I multiply this by 100 to move the decimal point over 2 spots, I get 0.66%. Now, ladies and gentlemen, anytime your monthly payment with $0 down, including taxes, is less than 1.5% of the MSRP, that's a good deal in my book. That's a lease that I am definitely, that's a car that I'm definitely considering leasing instead of financing. Now, if my monthly payment with $0 down, including taxes, is less than 1.25% of the MSRP, that's a great lease deal. That's a car that I am definitely leasing. And if my monthly payment with $0 down, including taxes, is less than 1% of the MSRP, that's an amazing lease deal. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not only a sub 1% lease deal, this is a 0.66% lease deal, which means it is way less than 1%, and that makes it an incredible lease deal in terms of value in my book. Now in this part of the video, what I want to do is compare the monthly lease payment on this Hyundai IONIQ 6 to the monthly payment if you were to finance this same car. And believe me, if you're not a fan of leasing, this part is going to blow your mind, and you'll see why leasing this car is a no-brainer from a financial standpoint. Now the current finance offer on this car is 2.99% for 48 months. So I plugged that into my auto loan calculator. I used an auto price of $43,600, which is the MSRP of this car. I used a loan term of 48 months, an interest rate of 2.99%, no down payment, and I used a 10% sales tax rate because I live in the state of Washington, more particularly in the city of Seattle. And I didn't include any title, registration, or other fees because we didn't do that in the lease either. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, your monthly payment is going to be $964 a month. And if we bring the calculator back on the screen, my monthly lease payment with $0 down, including taxes, was $290 a month. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a difference of roughly $670 a month. Now, a lot of you might be saying, hey, this is a 48-month term. Okay, let's go ahead and make this a 72-month term. Let's go ahead and give Hyundai the benefit of the doubt and use the same 2.99% interest rate. And let's also assume that, you got 10% off this car. Let's say it's over 10%. Let's say you got, let's just say you got 20% off this car, and your selling price is, what would that be? $35,600. And even when I do that, my monthly payment, if I finance this car, is $540 a month versus a lease payment of $290 a month. Now, some of you may be saying, hey, Ravi, but when you finance the car, you own the car, you can keep it for as long as you want. Well, guess what? This lease has a buyout option. So if I wanted to keep this car long term, I could buy it at the end of the lease, but only make a $290 payment for 24 months. And I get the $7,500 EV tax credit if I lease it. So I get to take full advantage of that $7,500. And meanwhile, when you buy it, you do not get that $7,500 EV tax credit. And another thing I want to mention is the gas savings when you drive an electric vehicle, because regardless of what the media tries to tell you, what people who hate on electric vehicles try to tell you, look, when you drive an electric vehicle and you have a level 2 charger where you live, you're going to save at least $100 to $150 in gas a month. So when you consider that the monthly payment on this car with $0 down, including taxes, is $290 a month, and let's just say that your monthly, gas savings is $100 a month, that brings your effective monthly payment down to about $190 a month with $0 down. And on top of that, you're not doing any oil changes. Electric vehicles don't really require the same amount of maintenance that, their internal combustion engine counterpart cars do. So you're going to save a ton of money there as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I thoroughly believe the Hyundai IONIQ 6 SE is a great car to lease. I think it represents a great value, and we might have some on DriveMatch.com here in the near future. So be sure to check out DriveMatch.com if you're considering leasing a vehicle in the near future. And with that, I'm going to call it a video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments section below. Financial knowledge is power. Please like and follow for more.